Captain Frank Miller stood at the bridge window of the UES Devastator, watching Earth grow smaller behind them. His weathered hands gripped the command rail as he thought about the weight of his mission. This ship, this single massive battleship, carried humanity's last hope. "Captain, all systems are ready," First Officer Lisa Roberts said from her station. Her voice was steady, but her eyes showed concern. "The crew is at battle stations." Miller nodded slowly. The Devastator was Earth's last working battleship, carrying a crew of 500 souls. 3 years of alien attacks had destroyed everything else. Cities burned, fleets turned to space dust, and billions dead. But humanity wasn't finished yet. "Show me the latest scans," Miller ordered. The main screen lit up with images of the Galactic Council's defense grid. It was a massive wall of automated platforms stretching across space, blocking Earth's solar system from the rest of the galaxy. Behind that wall waited the alien fleets that had nearly destroyed humanity. "Sir," Roberts walked up to stand beside him. The crew's talking. "They're calling this a suicide mission." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "They're not wrong, are they?" Miller turned to face his first officer. "Maybe not, but we're out of options." He pressed a button on the command rail, opening the ship-wide communication system. "This is your captain speaking." The crew stopped their work to listen. In the engine room, mechanics looked up from their tools. In the medical bay, doctors and nurses paused. In the weapons stations, gunners sat straighter in their chairs. 3 years ago, the Galactic Council decided Earth was too dangerous to join their alliance. They said humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable. Instead of welcoming us, they tried to destroy us. Miller's voice grew stronger. They didn't finish the job. Now they hide behind their defense grid, thinking we're trapped. They think we're beaten. He smiled grimly. They're wrong. In the ship's massive engine room, Chief Engineer John Parker watched his fusion drives pulse with power. The Devastator was humanity's greatest achievement. A ship 2 miles long, armed with weapons that could crack planets. The aliens had never seen anything like it because humans had built it in secret, deep under the Pacific Ocean. "Intel shows a weakness in their grid," Miller continued. "A small gap in their defenses. It's heavily guarded, but it's there. Our mission is simple. We break through. We show them that containing humanity was their biggest mistake." First Officer Roberts checked her tactical display. The first line of alien patrols would spot them soon. The Devastator's special stealth systems, another human innovation, wouldn't hide them much longer. "They think their technology is superior," Miller said. "They think their weapons are better, their ships are stronger, their tactics are smarter. But they forgot something important." He paused, letting his words sink in. They forgot that humans are at their best when backed into a corner. Alarm lights suddenly flashed across the bridge. Roberts rushed to her station. "Captain, 6 alien patrol ships just appeared on long-range scanners." Miller nodded calmly. "Right on schedule." He turned to his crew. "Battle stations, weapons, power up the main guns. Engineering, give me everything those fusion drives have got." The massive ship hummed with energy as weapon systems charged and shields powered up. In the gun turrets, crews checked their targeting systems. In the armor bays, damage control teams stood ready. "This is what we trained for," Miller said firmly. "This is why we built this ship. We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting to show the galaxy that humanity won't be caged." Roberts looked at her captain. "Sir, what if we fail?" Miller's eyes hardened. "Then we'll fail so spectacularly that they'll remember us forever." He straightened his uniform. "But we're not going to fail. We're going to punch through their defenses, break their grid, and show them exactly why they were right to fear us." The alien patrol ships grew closer on the view screen. The Devastator's engines roared, pushing the massive ship forward. In the quiet of space, humanity's last battleship moved toward its destiny. The real battle was about to begin. The 6 alien patrol ships moved like silver arrows through space, their hulls gleaming with strange lights. Inside the UES Devastator, Weapons Officer David Cooper watched them through his targeting screen. "They're using a triangle formation," Cooper said, his fingers moving across his control panel. "Standard Galactic Council tactics. They always do the same thing." First Officer Roberts nodded. "Predictable. Just like the intel said." She turned to Captain Miller. "Sir, they're charging weapons." The alien ships fired first. Bright beams of energy shot toward the Devastator, but they weren't aiming to destroy. These were warning shots. A voice boomed through the ship's communication system, speaking in the flat tones of an alien translator. "Earth vessel, you have crossed the quarantine line. Return to your solar system or be destroyed." Captain Miller smiled. "Cooper, show them our new toys." "Yes, sir." Cooper pressed a series of buttons. The Devastator's main guns, hidden under thick armor plates, slowly emerged. But these weren't normal guns. They were railguns, human technology that the aliens had never seen before. In the science lab, Emily Wright watched her screens carefully. She had spent months adapting the railguns to work in space combat. "Engineering, give me full power to the magnetic coils," she called through the intercom. The alien ships moved closer, preparing for their standard attack pattern. They didn't realize they were about to see something new. "Fire," Miller ordered. The railguns roared to life. They didn't shoot energy beams or plasma like alien weapons. Instead, they fired solid metal rounds at incredible speeds. The alien shields, designed to stop energy weapons, weren't ready for physical objects moving at near-light speed. 2 alien ships exploded instantly. The others broke formation in surprise. "They're confused," Cooper said with a grin. "Their shields can't handle kinetic weapons this fast." The ship's eye, a creation of Dr. Robert Hayes, spoke through the bridge speakers. "Analysis complete. Enemy shield frequencies are adapting, but too slowly. Recommend continued assault while advantage exists." "You heard the eye," Miller said. "Cooper, keep firing. Roberts, bring us around for another pass." The Devastator turned with surprising speed for such a large ship. The remaining alien vessels tried to regroup, but they were trained to fight energy weapons, not Earth's primitive technology. Another railgun blast tore through a third alien ship. The explosion lit up space like a new star. "Sir," Roberts called out, "they're trying to send a warning to the defense grid." "Let them," Miller said calmly. "By the time reinforcements arrive, we'll be long gone." "Engineering, how are the drives holding up?" Chief Engineer Parker's voice came through the intercom. "Fusion cores are running hot but stable, Captain. These bastards had no idea what we can do." The remaining alien ships tried a new tactic, spreading out to attack from different angles. But the Devastator's AI had already predicted this move. "Suggested countermeasure," the AI announced, releasing magnetic chaff. Wright typed rapidly at her station. "Chaff ready, Captain. It's not just metal pieces. Each one is magnetized. It'll confuse their sensors." "Do it," Miller ordered. Thousands of tiny metal fragments sprayed out from the Devastator. The alien ship's sensors, designed to track energy signatures, couldn't handle the cloud of magnetic interference. Their shots went wild, missing the human battleship completely. "Last 2 targets locked," Cooper reported. "Ready to fire." Miller stood from his command chair. "End it." The railguns fired one last time. The remaining alien ships disappeared in balls of fire and twisted metal. As the debris floated past the Devastator, the bridge crew allowed themselves a moment of celebration. But everyone knew this was just the beginning. "Damage report," Miller called out. "Minor hull scratches," Roberts replied. "Nothing serious. Our armor held perfectly." Miller nodded. "Send a message to Earth. Tell them Phase 1 is complete." He looked at the main screen, where the massive defense grid waited in the distance. "Now for the hard part." The Devastator pushed forward, leaving the wreckage of the patrol ships behind. They had won their first battle using human ingenuity against alien technology. But ahead of them, 10,000 defense platforms waited, guarding the path to the heart of the Galactic Council. The real test was still to come. Navigation specialist Amanda Foster felt her mouth go dry as she stared at her screen. In front of the Devastator, stretching as far as their sensors could see, was the Galactic Council's defense grid. 10,000 automated platforms hung in space like metal stars, each one armed with enough firepower to destroy a small moon. "My God," she whispered. "It's bigger than the intel showed." Captain Miller walked to her station and looked at the display. Even he, with all his years of experience, had never seen anything like this. The defense platforms were arranged in perfect geometric patterns, creating an enormous wall across space. "How far does it stretch?" he asked. Foster checked her readings. "The grid goes on for millions of miles in every direction. Sir, it's like a giant web." She pointed to her screen. "Each platform is connected to the others by energy beams. They share power, information, everything." In the engine room, Engineer John Parker was pushing the Devastator's fusion drives harder than ever before. Warning lights flashed on his control panel, but he ignored them. The massive engines groaned under the strain. "Captain," Parker's voice crackled over the intercom, "these readings are off the charts. The grid is putting out more energy than 100 suns." First Officer Roberts studied the tactical display. "Sir, the platforms are moving. They're forming some kind of pattern." The defense grid was coming alive. Platforms shifted position, their energy beams creating new connections. It was like watching a giant machine wake up. "Incoming fire," Cooper shouted from his weapons station. The first wave of attacks came from every direction. The Devastator's shields lit up as energy beams struck them from multiple platforms. The whole ship shook. "Damage report," Miller called out. "Shields holding at 80%, Roberts responded. "But we can't take too many hits like that." Foster's hands flew across her navigation controls. "Captain, I might have found something. There are gaps between the platforms. Small ones. But they're there." "Show me," Miller ordered. On the main screen, Foster highlighted the spaces between the platforms. They were tiny openings, barely big enough for the Devastator to slip through. But they were constantly moving as the platforms shifted position. "We could try to thread the needle," Foster suggested, "but the timing would have to be perfect." Another blast rocked the ship. This time, alarms blared throughout the decks. "Hull breach on Deck 7. Someone shouted. "Sealing bulkheads," the ship's AI announced calmly. "Medical teams responding." Miller gripped his command rail tighter. They had just lost their first crew members. Looking around the bridge, he could see the fear in his officer's eyes. But there was something else too: determination. "Parker," Miller called to engineering, "can you give us more speed?" "I can give you one burst," Parker replied. "Maybe 15 seconds at maximum thrust. After that, the drives will need time to cool." Miller turned to Foster. "Will 15 seconds be enough to get through one of those gaps?" Foster ran the calculations quickly. "Yes, sir, but—" She hesitated. "If we're off by even a fraction of a second, we'll crash straight into a platform." "Cooper, target our railguns on the nearest platforms," Miller ordered. "We'll need to clear a path." "Sir," Robert stepped closer to Miller, speaking quietly. "We've already lost people. If we do this, we might lose everything," Miller finished. "I know." He straightened up and opened the ship-wide comm. "All hands, brace for maximum acceleration. Medical teams, stand by. This is going to get rough." The defense platforms were closing in now, their energy beams creating a tighter and tighter web. The Devastator's shields flickered under constant bombardment. "Foster, plot your course," Miller commanded. "Parker, stand by for maximum thrust. Cooper, fire on my mark." The bridge crew held their breath. Outside, the massive defense grid loomed like a wall of certain death, but somewhere in that wall was a path. A dangerous, nearly impossible path, but a path nonetheless. "Sir," Foster said quietly, course plotted. Miller took one last look at the tactical display. They would only get one chance at this. If they failed, the Devastator would become just another piece of space debris, and humanity's last hope would die with it. "All hands," he said firmly, "prepare to show these aliens what humans can really do." The real challenge was about to begin. Dr. Rachel Martinez stared at her computer screen in the science lab, her eyes wide with sudden understanding. Numbers and patterns flashed across her display as the defense grid's energy readings poured in. "Captain," she called through the intercom, "I need you to see this right now." On the bridge, Captain Miller was watching the defense platforms close in around the Devastator. "This better be good, Doctor. We're about to try Foster's crazy run through the gap." "Sir, don't move the ship yet," Martinez said quickly. "The grid, it's not random. There's a pattern to its power distribution. The ship's AI helped me see it." The AI's calm voice joined the conversation. "Dr. Martinez is correct. The defense grid operates on a mathematical sequence. Each platform draws power in a predictable order." Miller looked at First Officer Roberts. She nodded, and he pressed a button. "Explain it simply, Doctor." Martinez sent her findings to the main screen. "It's like a heartbeat, sir. The grid pulses its energy in waves. When one section is strong, another must be weak. They can't all be at full power at the same time." In his weapons station, Cooper leaned forward. "Are you saying we can predict where the weak spots will be?" "Better than that," Martinez said excitedly. "We can create them. If we hit the right platforms at the right time, we can force the grid to reorganize its power distribution." Security Chief Kevin Walsh's voice came over the intercom from the damaged Deck 7. "Captain, we've sealed the hull breach, but we can't take many more hits." Miller thought quickly. They needed a new plan, and they needed it now. "Martinez, how sure are you about this pattern?" "The math doesn't lie, sir. The AI, and I checked it 3 times. The captain turned to his bridge crew. "Foster, can you plot a course that follows these power fluctuations?" Navigation Specialist Foster was already working on it. "Yes, sir. It'll be like surfing the gaps between waves. Hard, but possible." "Cooper, load the railguns with our heaviest rounds," Miller ordered. "When we hit them, I want it to hurt." The defense platforms were still firing, but now the Devastator's crew had a plan. Martinez sent more data to the bridge, showing exactly where and when each section of the grid would be weakest. "Look at this," Roberts pointed to a spot on the tactical display. "Every 43 seconds, this whole section drops to half power. That's our window." Engineer Parker spoke up from the engine room. "Captain, if we time this right, we might be able to use their own power distribution against them. When one section goes down, all that energy has to go somewhere." The AI processed this information. "Correct. A cascading power surge is possible if we can force multiple sections to redirect energy simultaneously." Miller smiled. This was what humans did best: finding patterns, exploiting weaknesses, turning an enemy's strength into a weakness. "How long until the next power cycle?" 20 seconds, Martinez reported. "Everyone to battle stations," Miller commanded. "Foster, plot your course through the weak points. Cooper, target the primary power nodes Martinez identified." The crew moved with renewed purpose. They weren't just running blind anymore. They had a plan, a mathematical formula for survival. 10 seconds, Martinez counted down. Roberts checked the shield status. Shields at 60% and holding. 5 seconds. Cooper's fingers hovered over his firing controls. "Railguns ready." "Now," Martinez called out. The Devastator surged forward. Cooper fired the railguns at exactly the right moment, hitting 3 power nodes just as they began their power cycle. The effect was immediate. Whole sections of the grid flickered as energy surged in unexpected directions. "It's working," Martin had shouted. "The grid's trying to compensate, but it can't handle the power spikes." Foster guided the massive ship through the chaos with surgical precision. Where there had seemed to be no path, now they could see the gaps in the grid's defenses. "More platforms powering down," Roberts reported. "They're trying to prevent a system overload." Miller watched as their path became clearer. Humanity's greatest weakness, their need to find patterns, to solve puzzles, to understand, had become their greatest strength. "Keep going," he ordered. "We found their weak point. Now let's tear it wide open." The Devastator pressed forward, riding the waves of power fluctuations through the grid. For the first time since the battle began, victory seemed possible. They weren't just fighting the grid anymore. They were using its own mathematics against it. The aliens were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun or a bomb. It's the human ability to find patterns in chaos. Communications Officer Brian Turner listened carefully to the alien signals flooding his station. After 3 years of war, he had learned to understand their language patterns. What he heard now made him smile. "Captain," Turner called out, "the aliens are panicking. They've never seen anyone attack the grid like this before." On the bridge of the Devastator, Captain Miller watched as another section of the defense grid flickered and failed. Dr. Martinez's pattern was working, but the ship was taking heavy damage. "They're calling us crazy," Turner continued, translating the alien messages. "They keep saying no rational species would take these risks." "They still don't understand humans," Roberts said, checking damage reports. "They think everything has to make logical sense." Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the ship. Warning lights flashed red across every station. "Direct hit," Roberts shouted. "Hull breach on Deck 4. We're losing power to the starboard shields." Security Chief Walsh's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, we need repair teams outside the ship. The damage is too serious to fix from inside." Miller stared at the tactical display. They were in the middle of the most dangerous space battle in human history, and Walsh wanted to send people outside the ship. "That's suicide," Roberts protested. "The repair teams would be exposed to enemy fire." Before Miller could respond, 3 crew members from engineering appeared on the bridge. They were already wearing spacesuits. "We volunteer, sir," the lead engineer said. Her name was Sarah Wilson. "We can fix the shield generators, but we have to do it now." Miller looked at these 3 humans, willing to risk their lives in the cold of space while enemy fire blazed around them. The aliens would never understand this, sacrificing yourself for others, taking impossible risks. "Do it," Miller ordered. "Cooper, give them cover fire. Foster, try to keep that side of the ship away from the heaviest attacks." Wilson and her team headed for the airlock. Minutes later, Miller watched on the screen as 3 tiny figures emerged onto the hull of the Devastator. They looked so small against the vastness of space and the massive defense grid. "Alien commanders are watching this," Turner reported from his station. "They're confused. They can't believe we would send unprotected humans outside during battle." The repair team worked quickly, their tools floating beside them on tethers. Enemy fire lit up space around them, but they didn't flinch. Cooper kept the railguns firing, destroying any platforms that turned toward the repair team. "Shield power increasing," Roberts reported. "They're actually doing it." In the science lab, Martinez watched the defense grid's reactions. "Captain, the aliens are changing their attack patterns. They don't know how to handle this kind of situation. Their automated responses aren't programmed for human unpredictability." The ship's AI added its analysis. Alien tactical computers attempting to calculate logical response. No results found. Human actions do not match any known combat protocols. Miller smiled. This was humanity's real strength. Not their weapons or their technology, but their willingness to try the impossible, to sacrifice for each other, to ignore the odds. Repair team heading back in. Roberts announced. All three made it, sir. Shields back to 70% power. As the repair team returned to the airlock, alien communications exploded with chatter. Sir, Turner said, amazement in his voice, they're calling us space madmen. Some of their commanders are arguing about whether they should change their whole defense strategy. Of course they are, Miller said. Their perfect logical system just got beaten by human craziness. The Devastator pushed forward through the grid, its newly repaired shields holding strong. The defense platforms continued their attacks, but their patterns were becoming erratic, uncertain. They're losing their coordination, Martinez observed. The grid runs on strict protocols, but those protocols don't work against humans who don't follow the rules. Miller opened the ship-wide comm. This is your captain speaking. What you just saw out there, that repair team risking everything. That's why we're going to win this war. The aliens built their defenses to stop logical enemies. But humans, we're anything but logical when we need to be. The crew cheered. They had just proved what humanity had known all along. Sometimes the craziest plan was the best plan, and the most powerful weapon was the human spirit. As the Devastator continued its charge through the failing grid, the aliens were learning a hard lesson. They had built their defenses to stop a rational enemy. Instead, they got humans, and humans had never let logic get in the way of survival. Engineer John Parker stood in the Devastator's main engine room, staring at his control panel. Warning lights flashed everywhere. The fusion drives were running hotter than they were ever meant to. Captain, he called to the bridge, I have a crazy idea, but you're not going to like it. Captain Miller's voice came back tired but steady. At this point, Parker, I'll take any ideas you've got. We can overload the fusion core, Parker said. Not enough to explode, but enough to create a massive energy surge. If Dr. Martinez's calculations about the grid's power distribution are right. He didn't need to finish. On the bridge, Martinez's eyes went wide. The grid would try to absorb the excess energy, she said. And with the pattern we've already disrupted, it would start a chain reaction. The ship's AI completed the thought. Probability of success, 47.3%. Probability of ship destruction, 52.7%. Miller looked around his bridge. The crew was exhausted. They had fought their way halfway through the defense grid, but the Devastator was badly damaged. Deck 4 was still open to space. 3 more decks were on emergency power, and their shields were failing again. What exactly are you suggesting, Parker? Miller asked. We push our fusion drives past the safety limits, Parker explained. Way past. Then we dump all that energy straight into the nearest defense platform. According to Martinez's pattern analysis, it should overload their power distribution network. First Officer Roberts checked the tactical display. The platforms are already struggling to manage their energy after our attacks. If we overload one section, the whole grid might collapse. Cooper finished from his weapons station. Parker's voice was grim. But if we're wrong about the timing, the feedback could destroy us instead. Miller stood silent for a moment. Around him, the bridge crew waited. Through the viewport, they could see the defense platforms still firing, their energy beams lighting up space. How long do you need? Miller finally asked. 10 minutes to modify the power systems, Parker replied. Then maybe 2 minutes to build up enough energy for the surge. Another hit rocked the ship. Shields at 30%. Roberts called out, We don't have much time. Miller made his decision. Do it, Parker. Everyone else, listen up. We're going to give engineering those 10 minutes. Cooper, keep those railguns firing. Foster, evasive maneuvers, but stay within range of our target platform. Martinez, calculate the exact point in the power cycle when we should release the surge. The next 10 minutes were the longest of their lives. Parker and his engineering team worked frantically, rerouting power systems and removing safety protocols. On the bridge, Foster's hands flew across her controls, keeping the Devastator moving in an unpredictable pattern. 8 minutes, Roberts counted down. The ship shuddered as more hits struck home. Warning sirens blared from multiple decks. 5 minutes. Cooper's railguns kept firing, taking out platforms when they could, but they were running low on ammunition. 2 minutes. Power systems modified, Parker reported. Beginning energy buildup. Captain, it's been an honor. Save the goodbyes, Miller said firmly. This is going to work. The Devastator's engines began to glow brighter than ever before. The deck plates vibrated under the crew's feet. Temperature warnings flashed on every screen. Energy at maximum safe levels, the AI announced. Exceeding safety protocols in 3, 2, 1. The ship's lights flickered. In engineering, Parker watched as the energy readings climbed into the red zone, then past it. 30 seconds to optimal release point, Martinez called out. Roberts looked at her captain. Sir, if this works. When this works, Miller corrected her. Energy buildup critical, the AI warned. Hull temperature exceeding design limits. 10 seconds, Martinez shouted. Foster positioned the ship perfectly. Cooper aimed their last railgun shots at the target platform. 5 seconds. Parker's hands hovered over his controls. Ready to release on your mark. 3, 2, 1. Now, Miller commanded. Parker slammed his controls forward. The Devastator's engines screamed as they released a massive surge of energy, more power than the ship was ever meant to channel. The target platform absorbed the hit directly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the platform began to glow. Then another, and another. The energy was spreading through their network, just as planned. It's working, Martinez yelled. The chain reaction is starting. The crew watched as their gamble began to pay off. The human ship had just done what the aliens thought was impossible. They had turned the grid's perfect design against itself. The real fireworks were about to begin. The defense grid lit up like a chain of dying stars. Platform after platform overloaded, their power systems unable to handle the surge from the Devastator's desperate gamble. In the darkness of space, it looked like someone had lit a fuse on a cosmic string of fireworks. Energy cascade spreading exponentially. Dr. Martinez reported, her voice filled with awe. The grid can't contain it. On his communications panel, Brian Turner's screens were going crazy with alien transmissions. Sir, the Galactic Council is in complete chaos. Their commanders are ordering an emergency shutdown, but it's too late. Captain Miller stood at the center of his bridge, watching history unfold. The defense grid, which had stood undefeated for 10,000 years, was tearing itself apart. Hull temperature dropping. The ship's AI announced. Power systems stabilizing. First Officer Roberts checked her tactical display. Sir, I'm counting at least 3,000 platforms destroyed already. The rest are either shutting down or overloading. In engineering, John Parker leaned against his control panel, exhausted but grinning. His crazy plan had worked. The fusion drives were burned out, but they had done their job. Status report, Miller called out. How's our ship? We're alive, if that's what you're asking, Parker replied. Engines are dead. We'll need months in a shipyard to fix everything, but she'll hold together. The view through the bridge windows was spectacular. Sections of the defense grid were still exploding, creating waves of destruction that spread in every direction. The perfect geometric patterns were now broken, leaving huge gaps in the aliens' impenetrable wall. Message from Earth, Captain, Turner said. They're tracking multiple alien fleets in retreat. The Galactic Council's forces are pulling back from the entire sector. The bridge crew cheered, but Miller raised his hand for quiet. Foster, can you get us a view of the Council's central command station? Navigation specialist Foster adjusted their long-range cameras. On the main screen, they could see the massive space station where the Galactic Council had directed their war against Earth. Now it was surrounded by the wreckage of their own defense grid. They're sending out a signal, Turner reported. His eyes went wide as he translated. Sir, They're calling for a ceasefire. They want to open peace talks. Miller smiled. Send them our response. We accept. Tell them humanity is ready to negotiate, as equals this time. Roberts walked to stand beside her captain. They never understood us, did they? They thought their technology made them superior. They forgot the most important rule, Miller said. Never corner something that's willing to risk everything to survive. Security Chief Walsh's voice came up from the damaged decks below. Captain, the crew wants to know, did we really just do it? Did we really break their unbeatable defense grid? Miller pressed the ship-wide comm button. Attention all hands. This is your captain speaking. Look out your nearest viewport. That's what humans can do when we work together. The Galactic Council called us primitive. They said we weren't ready to join their civilization. Well, we just proved them wrong. Throughout the ship, crew members gathered at windows to watch the last pieces of the defense grid burn out. Some cried, some laughed, some just stood in silent pride. In the science lab, Martinez was already analyzing the data. What we did today, it's going to change everything. The Council's entire defense strategy was based on that grid. Now every species in the galaxy knows it can be beaten. Not beaten, Miller corrected. Beaten by humans. Remember that difference. The Devastator floated in space, its hull scared and burned, its engines silent. But it had done what no other ship in the history of the galaxy had managed. It had broken through the unbreakable, survived the unsurvivable. Message from the Council leadership, Turner announced. They're asking how we did it. They want to know our secret. Miller looked around at his crew. Parker with his impossible engine modifications, Martinez with her pattern recognition, Foster with her precise navigation, Cooper with his perfect timing, Roberts with her unwavering support, and every other human who had risked everything for this mission. Tell them, he said, that the secret isn't in our technology. It's in our spirit. Tell them humanity is ready to share our knowledge, but first they need to understand one thing. Never mistake our kindness for weakness, because when we need to be strong. He looked out at the devastated grid, humanity's mark on the galaxy, and finished. We can move mountains, break barriers, and yes, even smash through their defense grid. The age of humanity had begun.